Ladies and gentlemen, if you're tired of life, if you've been silently battling feelings you can't put into words, then listen closely, because this might be the moment everything shifts for you. There comes a point when the weight you're carrying becomes too heavy to ignore, and the world starts telling you to be strong, when you're barely holding yourself together. But what if I told you that this exhaustion you feel isn't the end? What if it's the beginning of a transformation you don't even see coming yet? Before you decide you're done, hear this, because you're about to discover a reason, a spark, a truth that could change everything. If you're tired of life, if everything feels heavy, if you've been waking up with the same weight pressing on your chest every single day, then listen closely. Because tiredness is not a sign of weakness, it's a signal that somewhere along the way, you've been carrying more than any human being should carry alone. A signal that your soul is asking for a reason, not a rescue. And the beautiful thing about reasons is that they don't need to be loud, dramatic, or world-changing. They just need to be yours. Life will exhaust you when you spend too much time pretending you're fine, when inside you're fighting battles no one sees. But exhaustion is also clarity. It forces you to stop, to breathe, and to ask, why am I doing this? That question is not a burden, it's an invitation to shift from surviving to understanding. From pushing through life to reconnecting with what makes you come alive. Being tired of life doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. It means you've been showing up even when it didn't make sense. It means you've been caring, giving, trying, hoping, sometimes in silence, sometimes without appreciation, sometimes without direction. And that level of involvement in life, even when it hurts, is proof that something inside you is still fighting. Maybe quietly, maybe shakily, but fighting nonetheless. The world tells you to keep going, but rarely does it teach you why. The why is what turns exhaustion into purpose. The why is what transforms pain into direction. The why is the anchor that steadies you when everything else feels unstable. And the moment you reconnect with it, even the smallest spark can reignite an entire life. You don't need a perfect plan right now. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need one spark, one reminder that there is something in this world that needs you, even if you can't see it yet. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a dream, sometimes it's a future version of you who refuses to give up because they know what you're capable of becoming. If you feel tired, rest. Rest is not quitting. Rest is preparation. Even nature understands this. Seasons pause, oceans settle, storms pass. Your pause is not the end, it's part of the rhythm. In fact, the strongest people in the world are those who allow themselves to slow down long enough to regain the strength to rise again. There will be moments when the darkness feels louder than the hope, when the doubts speak faster than the dreams, when the failures overshadow the progress, but the truth is, you've survived every bad day you've ever had. You've overcome moments you thought would break you. You've gotten up on days you didn't want to move. You've healed from things you never talk about. That is not exhaustion. That is resilience in disguise. Life becomes meaningful the moment you decide that your story is not over. You are not here by accident. You are not breathing by coincidence. There is something about you, your perspective, your heart, your scars, your strength that the world needs. You don't need to be extraordinary to matter. You just need to continue 1 inch, 1 breath, 1 moment at a time. If you're tired of life, don't ask yourself how to keep going. Ask yourself who you want to be when the tiredness passes. Because it will pass. And who you become on the other side will depend on the decisions you make right now, the decision to rest, the decision to reconnect, the decision to believe that this chapter is not the whole story. You still have something powerful inside you, something unfinished, something meaningful, something waiting. And when you start to look beneath the fatigue, you begin to realize that life didn't tire you because you're weak. Life tired you because you've been operating without alignment. You've been pouring energy into places that don't refill you. You've been giving attention to expectations that were never yours to carry. You've been fighting to meet standards that were built for someone else's happiness, not your own. And when you live that way long enough, exhaustion becomes inevitable. Not because you can't handle life, but because you were never meant to live disconnected from yourself. The greatest turning point happens the moment you stop trying to be who the world wants and start remembering who you are. Not who you were taught to be, not who you were pressured to become, who you ***, the version of you that once dreamt freely, the version that used to believe in possibilities instead of limitations, the version that didn't fear failure because failing simply meant trying again with more wisdom. That version of you is still in there, buried beneath responsibilities, disappointments, and unspoken fears. But it's not gone, it's waiting for space to breathe. When you're tired of life, it's usually because you've forgotten your own voice. You've listened to everyone else's. You've tried to be sensible, practical, efficient, strong, reliable so much so that you lost the ability to listen to the whispers inside you telling you what you truly need. Those whispers don't yell, they don't demand, they wait. And the moment you finally turn inward, even for a second, you start to hear them again. That is where your hope lives. That is where your drive lives. That is where your reason to continue is hiding. Sometimes you feel tired because you've been holding on to something that's already run its course. A dream you outgrew, a relationship that's no longer aligned, a version of yourself that no longer fits the life you want. And yet you hold on not because it's right, but because you're afraid of who you might be without it. But letting go is not losing. Letting go is making room. Room for growth, for clarity, for something that actually moves you forward instead of weighing you down. There's a moment in every journey where the path gets quiet. No applause, no encouragement, no recognition. Just you, facing yourself. That moment can feel like loneliness, but it's actually an invitation. Because greatness is built in silence long before the world ever sees it. Strength is developed in private long before anyone notices. And purpose is discovered when you're honest enough to admit that the way you've been living isn't the way you want to continue. When you feel tired of life, remind yourself that this feeling is temporary, but the decisions you make during this time will shape the next chapter. Tiredness can convince you that nothing will change, but change rarely announces its arrival. It happens slowly, through small decisions, choosing to speak kindly to yourself, choosing to rest without guilt, choosing to stop comparing your journey to others, choosing to move even a little bit towards something that matters to you. Progress is not always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet commitment to keep moving forward no matter how heavy the day feels. Your tiredness is not a flaw. It's evidence that you've been giving, trying, and enduring, and that means you have far more strength than you realize. Strength is not proven on the days you feel powerful. Strength is proven on the days you feel empty yet still choose to show up. Even if showing up simply means deciding not to give up on yourself, the truth is, life doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty, the honesty to say, I'm struggling, but I'm not done. The honesty to admit that you need rest, not escape. The honesty to explore the parts of you that you've ignored because you were too busy surviving. And once you allow yourself that honesty, something shifts. The weight doesn't disappear instantly, but it becomes manageable, because clarity lightens the load. Purpose lightens the load. Choosing yourself, even in small ways, lightens the load. You weren't meant to walk through life numb or disconnected or exhausted beyond repair. You were meant to feel, to grow, to rise, to rebuild. And sometimes being tired is simply the first step toward redefining what your life is meant to become. You're not at the end, you're at the turning point. And the fact that you're still searching, still listening, still here, means that deep down you already know there is something ahead worth holding on for. And when you reach that turning point, it doesn't always feel like a breakthrough. Sometimes it feels like uncertainty, like you're floating between who you were and who you're becoming. That space can be uncomfortable because it forces you to confront truths you've avoided, truths about what drains you, what inspires you, what scares you, and what you truly want. But that space is also where real transformation begins. Growth doesn't start with confidence, it starts with honesty. It starts with acknowledging that something in your life needs to evolve, even if you're not yet sure how to change it. Being tired of life often pushes you to question everything, and questioning is not a sign of falling apart. It's a sign that you're waking up. Most people drift through life without ever examining their choices, their values, or their direction. But when you're tired, when you feel worn down, when your heart feels heavy, you're forced to pause. And in that pause, you have the rare opportunity to rebuild intentionally instead of continuing on autopilot. It's easy to assume that the people who seem strong never reach this point. But they do, everyone does. The difference is that some choose to face the discomfort instead of running from it. They treat tiredness not as the end, but as feedback. Feedback that something needs to change. Feedback that the path they're on isn't aligned. Feedback that the habits, relationships, or environments they've accepted no longer support the life they want. And feedback is a gift, because once you see what's not working, you can finally start choosing what will. If life feels heavy, it might be because you've been carrying stories about yourself that were never true. Stories that said you're not capable, not worthy, not enough. Stories that came from past wounds, mistakes, or moments where you felt powerless. But those stories don't define you. They were written by a version of you that didn't have the knowledge, the strength, or the resilience you've built since then. And if you look closely, you'll see that the simple fact that you're still here proves that you're far stronger than you've been giving yourself credit for. When you feel tired of life, it's tempting to isolate, to pull away, to hide your struggle because you don't want to appear weak. But you don't have to walk through your hardest moments alone. You don't need to share your entire story with the world, but you do need to allow yourself connection. Connection with people who make you feel safe, with environments that help you breathe, with small moments that remind you that not everything is heavy. Connection doesn't fix everything, but it gives you the strength to face the things that need fixing. And sometimes all it takes is one moment of connection with yourself, one moment of stillness where you ask, what do I actually want? That question can feel overwhelming, but the answer doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be honest. Maybe you want peace. Maybe you want clarity. Maybe you want a fresh start. Maybe you want to feel proud of yourself again. Whatever the answer is, let it guide your next small step. Because life shifts through small steps, not giant leaps. You don't have to reinvent your entire life in a single moment. You just need to make decisions that honor you a little more each day. Decisions like letting yourself rest without guilt. Decisions like forgiving yourself for the times you didn't know better. Decisions like prioritizing things that make you feel alive instead of drained. Decisions like removing yourself from situations that constantly make you feel small. One choice at a time, one moment at a time, you begin to rebuild. The tiredness you feel right now may be telling you that you've reached the limit of who you used to be. That limit isn't failure, it's evolution. It means you're ready for your next chapter. Even if you don't feel ready, even if you're scared, even if you're unsure. Growth rarely feels like excitement at first. It feels like discomfort, confusion, and sometimes even fear. But those feelings are proof that you're stepping into unfamiliar territory. And unfamiliar territory is where transformation lives. Remember, you don't need certainty to begin. You just need willingness to try, willingness to hope again. Willingness to believe that there is more for you than what you're experiencing now. And there always is. Because your story is still unfolding and the pages ahead haven't been written yet, and you, no matter how tired you feel, are still the one holding the pen. And as you hold that pen, even if your hands are trembling, understand that there is incredible power in simply choosing to keep writing. Most people believe that transformation begins with a dramatic moment, an epiphany, a sudden surge of motivation. But in reality, it begins in quiet decisions, those small internal promises you make to yourself when no one is watching. Promises like, I won't give up on myself today. Promises like, I'll try again, even if the progress feels invisible. Promises like, I will not let this tired version of me define my entire life. You may not feel strong right now, but strength isn't always loud. Sometimes strength is soft, steady, almost unnoticeable. It shows up in the way you choose not to let your worst thoughts win. It shows up in the way you keep going even when you don't feel ready. It shows up in the way you continue searching for meaning, even when your vision feels clouded. And the beautiful thing is that these small moments of strength accumulate. Over time, they become evidence that you're capable, that you're evolving, that you're growing into someone who can face challenges without losing yourself. When life wears you down, it's natural to crave certainty. You want guaranteed outcomes, clear answers, a sense of direction that removes all doubt. But certainty is rarely what helps you grow. What truly builds you is the willingness to move forward without it. To trust that even if the path is blurry, you're still allowed to step forward. Some of the most meaningful breakthroughs in life happen during times of confusion, not clarity. Because confusion forces you to explore, to rethink, to reevaluate what matters most. And in that exploration, you often discover things about yourself you never would have noticed otherwise. If you're tired of life, it might be because you've been measuring your worth through timelines, achievements, and comparisons. You've convinced yourself that you're behind, that you're failing, that others are doing better. But the truth is, life isn't a race, and there's no universal timeline you're supposed to follow. Every meaningful journey takes time, and no two paths are the same. The speed at which you grow doesn't determine the value of your growth. The depth of your journey matters far more than the pace, and while you may not see progress externally, something powerful is happening internally. Every time you choose to reflect instead of collapse, you grow. Every time you try again after a setback, you grow. Every time you recognize that you deserve more than exhaustion, you grow. You may not notice it in the moment, but these small internal shifts eventually lead to external transformation. The roots always grow before the branches appear. One of the reasons life feels heavy is because you've spent too much time carrying old versions of yourself. Versions shaped by past mistakes, old fears, outdated beliefs, and painful memories. But you're allowed to outgrow who you used to be. You're allowed to reinvent yourself. You're allowed to step into a future that looks nothing like your past. Just because something once defined you doesn't mean it has to define you forever. Every difficult season of life serves a purpose. Not a punishment, but a transformation. Pain deepens your understanding. Struggle sharpens your awareness. Tiredness forces you to pause and reassess, and from that reassessment emerges a new clarity, one you can't gain when everything is easy. Growth rarely comes from comfort. It comes from friction, challenge, and moments where you have no choice but to confront yourself honestly. If you feel disconnected, that's okay. You're not supposed to have everything figured out. You're supposed to learn. You're supposed to rediscover parts of yourself. You're supposed to break old patterns and build new ones brick by brick, day by day. And even if it takes longer than you hoped, it's still progress. You may not realize it, but there's a future version of you who is deeply grateful that you didn't stop here. A version who wakes up with peace instead of heaviness. A version who trusts themselves instead of doubting every step. A version who can look back at this chapter and say, that was the moment everything began to change. And that version of you is not far away. They're waiting for the choices you make right now. The choice to listen to your needs, the choice to treat yourself with compassion, the choice to believe that your story is still unfolding, and that you still have so much left to experience, create, and become.